When my mom was pregnant with me, she was going through a really difficult time. She was just not prepared for this pregnancy, and she was visiting doctors, asking them for an abortion, and there was no doctor in that town that would perform the abortion. She was quite overwhelmed and quite resentful about that, and she ended up bringing me to her parents. So I was dropped off on this little farm in Germany, and my Oma and my Opa, grandma and grandpa, became my parents. It really just seemed very stable and very secure, and I felt that I was loved there. About 6 years later, my mom shows up, and she had remarried, and they had 2 children, and she really just stripped me from the life that I knew and brought me to America with this new family. My relationship with my mom was very, very distant and very strained. I felt that she was so consumed with her husband and with things pertaining to him that she neglected us children. And it was really interesting because I'm in this new family now where I really was physically, psychologically, and emotionally abused. I was very angry with her, and at the same time that I struggled and had a conflict with myself and really hating myself, I actually hated my mom. And I remember telling her that, and I was just like, I wish you would die. And it's heartbreaking to think about it now, but I was so angry because I couldn't understand how she couldn't be a mother. When I was 14 years old, I had gotten a job through the Summer Youth Employment Program, and I was placed in a nursing home. Where it was significant was I had a coworker who was a Christian woman. She was a Puerto Rican woman. Her name was Ruth. And she said, why don't you come to church with me and my husband and my family? And I remember going with them. The thing that resonated with me was the love that was there. And it was so opposite of my first exposure, going back to my childhood. It contradicted what I had experienced previously. And I remember feeling so insecure and awkward because they were like the perfect little TV family. And I was like, they have to be faking this because there's no way this man is so nice to her. And I really believe that that is where the seed to healing and to seeing God's character was planted. About a year later, my sister was murdered due to gang violence. And it was after that incident that I decided to forgive everyone that had hurt me. And so I started to go on a journey to find purpose. And part of that was healing my relationship with my mom. And we would have conversations. It really, really changed my perspective about my mom because I began to see that she was running from pain and she was broken because of the things that happened to her, and she was living in a cycle. And I knew that although I was placed in this family and I was placed in this environment and I had very traumatic things happen to me that I had no control of, that I was now at an age where I could begin to rewrite my story. Not long after, I met a business mentor while I was working from home with a sales company who was actually a pastor. He would just invite my husband and I to church, and he would just share the gospel. He would open up his business meetings with prayer. And at first I was quite offended because I'm just here to make some money. I don't need all of this religious stuff. And about a year later, I went to his church, and that was where I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And it was such a beautiful moment because the story that I had been trying to rewrite on my own, I'm now able to do that with the hand of God. And I saw that his hand had always been on my life. When I look back and just think about the abuse that I had to overcome, the different traumas and the losses, the identity crisis that I went through and just not loving myself and having to learn what that looked like, there was something just so liberating to know that Jesus had died on the cross so that I would not have to carry the sins of others and myself any longer. And it really, really took me on a whole new path. And I was just like, I'm never looking back. That this is where I draw the line in the sand. That everything from this point forward will be for the glory of Christ. We have no control of how our story begins, but we all have the power to rewrite the story and decide how it's going to end. I may have ended up with all of these demonic things that had happened, but I'm going to heaven from here. My story is ending well.